We're joined by two fine Queenslanders, Sky News contributor and former Howard Government Minister Gary Hardgrave, and former Morrison Government Minister and member for Hinkler, Keith Pitt. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Amanda,
I want to start with some more news out of Western Australia that proves why more and more Australians are turning against the Albanese government's Voice to Parliament proposal. Over the weekend, the South East Regional Centre for Urban Land Care organised about 120 volunteers to plant more than 5,000 seedlings around the southeastern suburbs of Canning and Gosnells before a local Indigenous corporation allegedly withheld approvals for the event until a $2.5 million compensation bill was paid. Keith, this comes a week after Geraldton Mayor Shane Van Stein had to shut down an event to plant trees in commemoration of the late Queen Elizabeth due to conflict and confusion over the state's new cultural heritage laws. Where do you see this going?
Well, this is a glimpse into the future that I don't think the majority of Australians want. No. Imagine what it will be like if the Voice referendum is successful and there are the minority group in Australia has their own democracy, their own route into the executive, their own way to get decisions. I mean, this has ultimately ended up about the money. $2.5 million of a $10 million grant. Nearly all the land care grants that I saw in government were done by volunteers. They spend nearly everything on material, on trees, on equipment, on the things that they need. And never forget, this is about the environment. It's about improving riverbanks around Perth and the areas around Perth. Isn't that a good outcome? And yet we see an organisation, and I don't know what the connection is, I'm not close to it. How do you determine which organisation it is that can make these claims? It has to provide an approval to plant trees on a riverbank. And you look at the rest of the legislation, it's freehold land. It's yours. It's not up for some conglomeration or some group to automatically decide. If you don't know this referendum, vote no.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a fundamental importance of private property rights for people being able to invest and grow an economy. And it sounds like this is a fundamental change to them. Gary, in Western Australia, landowners now need to pay an Aboriginal consultant up to $160 an hour to obtain permits to do anything on their land that might disturb more than 50 centimetres of soil. This is just the beginning of a whole new industry of barriers and bureaucracy, isn't it?
Well, of course it is, and that's what it's all about. More barriers, more bureaucracy at a time when we've got a cost of living crisis. Let's drive up the cost of living. I mean, you've just had the fantastic Bev MacArthur talking about the tens of thousands of kilometres of steel towers to go across Victoria. Well, it's not just Victoria, it's right across Australia, the nonsense that's happening in the Queensland government. And we don't need farmers anymore, Amanda. Apparently the left believe you just simply get your veggies out of Woolworths and Coles. You don't need farmers. You're just going to fill the farmlands with solar panels coming in from China and places like that. And you've got $1.5 trillion worth of this rubbish coming into our shores. And by the way, going into the land. So you can imagine how many consultants, how many hours at $160 an hour are going to be paid as everything is planted into the ground. So your cost of living, your cost of electricity has only got one way, and it's right up. And frankly, Australia is heading for a big, big problem. Keith's the former Resources and Energy Minister, but I've got to tell you, Amanda, it's pretty simple. Australia used to dig itself out of economic hurt by using cheap electricity to make stuff. We don't have that advantage anymore. Our hurt is coming, and it's going to be big, it's going to be brutal, and it's Albo's idea. He's just mad, gone completely bonkers.
But the thing is, it's all self-inflicted. There's no reason why we couldn't change course right now. Keith, former Prime Minister Tony Abbott has said the Voice's success is contingent upon the money of woke corporates and woke billionaires. Have a listen to this.
If money can buy a referendum, this referendum will be bought for the yes case with the weight of corporate money, with woke foundations and woke billionaires pouring in their virtue signalling.
Spot on.
Keith, Mr Abbott is of course correct, but going off the latest polling, could the woke corporates actually be having the opposite effect on public opinion?
Well, I'd hope so, but Abbott is spot on. I mean, here's some tips for the people in corporate land in Australia who are tipping money just into the yes case. Well, how about you split it equally between the yes and the no case so every Australian is equally informed and they can make their own decision? It's a referendum for them. They are the ones who are having the vote. Or better still, don't spend it at all. Spend it on your staff or return it to your shareholders, many of whom are actually superannuation funds that are trying to build wealth for Australians in retirement. I mean, the fact that they're going one side in a referendum around a change to Australia's constitution based on a vibe. But that's what this is about. It's about a feeling. Well, I think the shareholders will have a feeling and they'll hear all about it at the next shareholders meeting.
Yeah.
Well, it should go back to shareholders, but unfortunately that, as you noticed, Big Super is in cahoots with a lot of this woke agenda. Now to the ABC, which has been exposed for really what is hypocrisy. We often hear woke journalists mock Sky News for having an older audience. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I love our older viewers.
They've got no audience.
New figures show that 2/3 of the ABC 7 p.m. news bulletin viewership is older than 65. Young people aren't watching. Gary, why is this and why should the taxpayer keep paying for it?
Yeah, older Australians should know better than to subject themselves to the hedonistic experience of outrage. I mean, they possibly only watch the ABC just to yell at the television or yell at the radio because they're not getting informed, they're getting indoctrinated. But look, the simple reality is if you want it, pay for it, subscribe to it, put it on a subscription service and make it your choice to pay for it. For the rest of us who just don't even watch it, and I'll go and buy the DVD of Bluey so my grandkids can watch that without any fear of the ABC indoctrination. But fair income, there is absolutely no reason in the 2020s for a 1920s model of taxpayer-funded TV and radio to exist. It just simply should be a subscription service. Full stop, end of story.
A little bit of accountability in terms of accountability to the market would do them a world of good.
Yep.
And like you, Gary, I've got a soft spot for Bluey too. Keith Pitt, Gary Hargraves, thank you both very much for your time.